In this screencast, I want to talk about Python's package manager as well as using virtual environments to keep track of everything that you're installing with the package manager. So let's first talk about what a package manager is. There's tons of Python software out there that's available for you to use, and some of it depends on other Python software. This is just stuff that people wrote and share freely with the rest of the world. So um, a package manager allows you to install a Python package, and it will automatically take care of dependencies. Now, all the major programming languages have package managers as well, and some operating systems do too. So Ubuntu, for example, uses apt-get. So if you've ever used Ubuntu, you may have used a command like this to install Python 3, for example. But we can install many different types of software using apt-get. And just like all package managers, it's going to automatically resolve dependencies. So anything else that your software package depends on will get installed automatically. And that's what package managers are really for, to help keep track of all of that stuff and make it easier for you to install software. So one of the Python packages that I'm very fond of is this thing called Flask here. This is a framework for creating web apps. So you install Flask and then you have access to the, uh, the Flask library to, or rather the Flask package to use tons and tons of different objects to create applications. So I don't have it installed yet, and just to prove it to you, if I run Python 3 and ask it to import Flask, I should get an error. It says no module named Flask. So let's take a look at how we would install this module. So when I come over here, it says pip install Flask. So pip is actually not installed on my machine because I'm running one of the latest versions of Python 3. So I'm going to install things using pip 3. This is the package manager that comes with my Python. So if we look at the GitHub page for this, um, they'll also tell us here how to install it. So all dependencies are installed by using pip install Flask. And this author encouraged us to use virtual environments. So I'm going to explain this in the second part of this screencast. For now, let's install Flask like this, but we'll use pip 3. Okay, and you can see it's downloading and installing all this stuff here. Okay, so notice what it says at the bottom. Successfully installed Flask, Workzoid, Jinja 2, it's dangerous, and markup safe. So all of these bits right here were dependencies for Flask. So it installed these automatically for us as well. Now, one way to see everything that's installed right now with our package manager is to use this freeze command. So if I type pip3 freeze, it's going to show me what's been installed, and it's going to show me their version numbers. Okay, so I asked it to install Flask, and it also installed the rest of this stuff. Now, if I start a Python shell and I import Flask, it's going to work. So I could look at the help on Flask, etc. But let's leave that be for now. This is not a Flask tutorial. So if you noticed, we installed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different Python modules with that one command right there. Now you'll also notice that our package manager is keeping track of the versions, and that's really important. So if you think about this for a moment, hopefully it disturbs you just a little bit to be running around installing these packages in my main system Python installation, right? I've got all this extra stuff in here now that's a part of Python, and I could be working on multiple projects, and maybe one of them uses Jinja, maybe one of them uses something else. Maybe it's going to use different versions of some of these right here. And so if I'm working on different applications, I could start running into headaches real quick. I could start losing track of what it is that I'm installing. So what I'm going to show you how to do next is uninstall all of these things we just installed And then I'm going to show you how to use virtual environments to keep these things more separate and make them more disposable, we say. Okay, so with most package managers, the process for uninstalling is usually this simple. So I'm going to uninstall Flask, and it's going to ask me if I wish to proceed. Successfully uninstalled Flask. That's great. So let's see what is still there. Okay, now some package managers will automatically delete dependencies for you as well if they're not being used by anything else. But pip3 is not uninstalling these dependencies for me, so I have to go through and do them by hand. So I could uninstall Jinja2 as well, like so. I will proceed, okay. But you could see that this would get a little bit cumbersome if I'm going to do it for each one of these. There's another way to do this. I'm going to make a new file that just has these right here. I'm going to save it. Let's just call this rm.txt for remove. I'm going to put this right here. Well, I already had one, but I will replace it. Okay, so there's a rm.txt file now in my home directory, and what I can do is I can use pip3 to uninstall all of these in one shot. Okay, I still have to proceed for each one. I can probably force this, but now you'll see that it's not there. Okay, nothing's there. I've uninstalled everything that I have installed previously with pip3. So now let's talk about virtual environments. I'm going to make a directory. We'll just call it demo here. Cd into demo. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to imagine that this is my main directory for some application project. This is where I would want to initialize a Git repository, for example, to keep track of all of my source code. And this is also where I'm going to put my virtual environment. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is install virtualenv. So I'm going to install this, and really this is the only thing that I'm going to have installed in my main Python installation on this computer. So if I do pip3 freeze to check and see what's been installed, it's only this one thing. Okay. Now I am going to create a virtual environment now. If I just type virtualenv, it's going to show me like the different options for running this program. And it says you must provide a destdir. This stands for destination directory. So when I make a virtual environment, what's going to happen is it's going to copy over a bunch of links and other things to my main Python binaries. Let me just show you what happens. The canonical name for your virtual environment is venv, like this, but you can name it anything you want. Most people just do it this way. Okay. And so now I've got something in this directory. I've got another directory called venv. Okay. Let's take a look at what's in there. So I've got this binary directory with an activate script. See these little arrows right here? These are links to Python binaries on my main installation. Okay, so what's happened is I've basically copied over a lightweight version of Python into this directory, and now from here I'm going to install all sorts of Python stuff, all kinds of extra packages and everything, and it's going to keep it separate from the rest of my installation. So here's how it looks. First thing I need to do is activate this virtual environment. And it looks like this. Source, okay, that's the directory in my demo directory right here. We just looked at this activate script. Now you'll see that in front right here, it's telling me that the virtual environment has been activated. Basically, it just exported a bunch of environment variables. Now when I run Python 3, it's going to be pointing to the files in that virtual environment directory right there. Okay, so with this virtual environment activated, now I'm going to do things like install Flask. Okay, so I've successfully installed all of those. Maybe I want to install some other things like PyMongo for working with MongoDB. So I can install another package. Okay, I can see what's been installed here is all of these dependencies. Now, if you come to this directory again, well, let me first show you in this directory when I run Python 3. Now I can import Flask. I can import PyMongo. But check this out over here. I'm in the same demo directory. But if I try to import Flask, I'll get an error. Okay, no module named Flask. That's because Flask is only installed in this virtual environment. Okay, now in order to run that virtual environment, I need to run this script again. So this now activates my virtual environment, and when I run Python and I try to import Flask, no error. It's there. Okay. So what's next? That's really the gist of everything that I wanted to show you, but I'm going to show you just a couple of extra pieces to help keep all of this in order. So you already saw the way to uninstall things with Flask, with pip3, and all of that is still true. You will often find that people have requirements.txt files in their projects. Like if you're looking through stuff on GitHub, you'd see a requirements.txt file. Now, if I'm making this application here in this demo directory, I kind of want to keep track of the different software that I've added to the project, or rather that my project is going to be depending on. So I installed Flask, and I also installed PyMongo. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this to demo. We're going to call it requirements.txt. Okay, and there it is, requirements.txt. Now, there are a couple ways to delete your virtual environment. The easiest way is like so. So I'm going to remove that whole directory right there, and it's done. It's gone. Those Python packages that I installed are now gone, but I did leave myself a requirements.txt file that I can work off of again. So there's requirements.txt. It's got Flask and PyMongo in there. We can now install all of those using pip3 again. So first thing I need to do is make a new virtual environment. So there's my virtual environment getting copied over right now. I'm going to activate it before I install this stuff with pip. And then I'm going to install requirements.txt, and this is telling pip to use this file right here. Okay, so it's installing Flask, PyMongo, and all of the dependencies. Okay, so that's the basics there. So here we've got our packages that we've installed, and I hope that this clarifies Python's package manager and the use of virtual environments.